Welcome to Justice Matters. I am Denise, Stewart, Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Justice Matters is a program aimed to inform, engage, and empower you with knowledge of Virgin Islands laws that affect our everyday lives and our community. We'll engage in insightful discussions with special guests on the laws and related topics so you can stay informed, empowered, and make a difference in our community. The topic of today's show is human trafficking, the crime that hides in plain sight. We'll take a look at Virgin Islands laws against human trafficking. We'll be joined by my special guest, two top local victim advocates that have been providing help and refuge to numerous trafficking victims here in the Virgin Islands. And third, we will have a call to action so you can see how you can help and be a part of the solution. So what is human trafficking? Generally, human trafficking involves engaging a child in prostitution or using force, fraud, or coercion to trap a person into prostitution or other type of forced labor. And they do it for some profit or some benefit. It is a form of modern-day slavery. Federal human trafficking laws actually are rooted in the 13th Amendment constitutional prohibition of slavery and involuntary servitude. It is involuntary because the traffickers take advantage of people's vulnerabilities and use violence, manipulation, false promises of well-paying jobs, or even romantic relationships to entice, then trap and exploit their victims. They force the victims to work as prostitutes, sex workers, or other jobs with little or no pay, sometimes to pay off a debt that can never be fully paid in full. Under the Virgin Islands Criminal Code in Title 14, human trafficking consists of several crimes arising from two primary offenses: forced labor and sexual servitude. Under Section 134 of our Criminal Code, a person commits the offense of forced labor if the person knowingly uses coercion to compel an individual to provide labor or services, except when such conduct is permissible under local or federal law. Forced labor is a felony punishable by up to 30 years and a maximum of $25,000 in fines, or a maximum of $40,000 in fines if the victim is a minor. As for sexual servitude, the Criminal Code at Section 135 says a person commits the offense of sexual servitude if a person knowingly maintains or makes available a minor for the purpose of engaging the minor in commercial sexual activities, or if a person knowingly uses coercion or deception to compel an adult to engage in commercial sexual activity. When it comes to minors, it is not a defense in a prosecution that the minor consented to engage in commercial sexual activity or that the defendant believed the minor was an adult. Notice also that coercion is not a factor when it comes to a minor, only when it refers to an adult. Punishment for sexual servitude of a child is 30 years to life. I repeat, 30 years to life, and a maximum fine of $100,000. For an adult victim, it is 30 to 50 years imprisonment with no fine. Coercion refers to the use of deception or threat of force, deportation, or serious harm against a person to trap them into performing any kind of work, such as prostitution, as well as working as a domestic worker, a cook, a cleaner, or laborer. So while it might look on the surface to be a normal job or chosen occupation, the victims are actually controlled and under threat, sometimes forced into paying back insurmountable debt that could never be paid in full, or sometimes have had their passports or other identity documents taken away while being threatened with deportation. Commercial sexual activity means prostitution or sexual activity for which anything of value is given to, promised to, or received by a person. Then there's a separate and distinct offense for trafficking an individual, A person commits the offense of trafficking an individual if the person knowingly recruits, transports, transfers, harbors, receives, provides, obtains, isolates, maintains, or entices an individual in furtherance of forced labor or sexual servitude. That is sometimes also referred to as sex trafficking. The penalty for conviction of trafficking an adult is not more than 25 years in prison. For trafficking a minor or person under the age of 18, not less than 25 years in prison. Virgin Islands law also makes it a crime to patronize a victim of sexual servitude, knowing that that person is a victim of sexual servitude. That involves the payment of money or something of value in order to arrange for the engagement of that person, that victim, in commercial sexual activity. A person commits the offense of patronizing a minor for commercial sexual activity if, with the intent that the minor engages in any kind of commercial sexual activity, there is some exchange of payment or value for those services. A person who patronizes a child for commercial sexual activity can face up to 15 years imprisonment. The takeaway from all of this is that there are no child prostitutes. The children are victims of sexual exploitation, period. My investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, launched soon after taking office as Attorney General, revealed a well-constructed criminal enterprise that involves the alleged sex trafficking of numerous women and girls from the U.S. and all over the world as young as age 14. Allegedly, they were trafficked through our airport, having arrived on his private jet and transported by helicopter or boat to his secluded private island of Little St. James, about a mile off from St. Thomas. This investigation resulted in my filing a civil enforcement court action against the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for violations of the Virgin Islands Criminally Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or CICO. CICO is the Virgin Islands Anti-Criminal Enterprise and Anti-Racketeering Law. You see, human trafficking is often conducted by criminal enterprises, large and small, and they're often hard to detect and hidden under the guise of legitimate business establishments and normal public activities, including in hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, malls, residences, beaches, private islands, airports, right out there in public, happening right in front of our eyes, but yet not recognized. The traffickers subject their victims to physical and mental abuse, sexual exploitation, sexual assaults, threats of violence or isolation to maintain complete control over them. Millions of men, women, and children of all races, genders, and nationalities are trafficked, exploited, and abused throughout the United States, including right here in the Virgin Islands. Yet most cases go unreported and undetected. This means that trafficking victims in the Virgin Islands would end up having to continue to suffer in silence, unless, of course, they are rescued by federal or local law enforcement and local victim services organizations such as the Family Resource Center in St. Thomas and the Women's Coalition on St. Croix. That's why I am so honored to have joining me today two top community victim advocates from these community organizations, both of whom have been intimately involved in providing assistance, help, and refuge to human trafficking victims here in the Virgin Islands. Ms. Stewart, please introduce yourself.
My name is Anya Stewart. I serve as the Executive Director for the Family Resource Center. For the past 20 years, I've been working with FRC and serve as the ED for the past 3 years.
Welcome to Justice Matters, Ms. Stewart. Can you tell us to what extent has the Family Resource Center assisted victims of human trafficking in the Virgin Islands?
We have been providing services for human traffic victims for as long as I can remember. We've had a few in our shelter. We provide shelter and counseling services, and we were also able to provide them with the bare necessities, and we had some children who were involved, and we were also able to help them. 24 hours we do. It could be, and especially now since everything is virtual, we also schedule virtual meetings, and we have bilingual social workers, French and Spanish. We have been providing travel tickets. We have been providing Airbnb, hotels. We even had clients all the way from India last year who came in, and then ICE called us, and that's how we were involved, and that's when we provided travel tickets and Airbnb and whatever they could not do, I guess we took over.
You mentioned ICE, and for the benefit of those people who may not know what ICE means, you are referring to the Federal Immigration and Naturalization Service, am I correct?
Immigration, yeah.
How do you get in contact with these victims who need your help and assistance?
Through VIPD, and we get calls from a few agencies. Some of them, they don't have the resources that we have to help clients. I am happy that we are able to help in some areas, and in areas that we are not able to help, we refer them to other agencies. Once there was a lady, she heard the noise and stuff, so she know my personal number, and she called me, but I told her she should have called VIPD first. Anytime a victim call, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'll stop, because I don't want to say next day if I had only known. So I always try my best to help the victims as much as I could. Some people call them nosy neighbor, but I don't think when they are doing things like they are not nosy. They just want our community to be safe.
That, actually, that is a very, very good point, because it is everybody's business. It is your business, my business, to look out for our neighbors, especially when you see that somebody might be in danger. So that's a good point. Also, that they can do so confidentially. And so their safety is protected as well. But tell me, based on your experience, what kind of things is it that you've seen where people would see that makes them suspect that something is going on?
Especially in our shelter, when the clients are there, and well, their mother have an 8 to 5 job where she only make maybe $70 for the children. When you notice as the weeks go by, they coming home with tablets, they coming home with iPads and AirPods and all of the above. You have to question that. And then the children, they change drastically. When they came in, they were this nice young lady or this nice, and out of the blue they change. That's why I know, and that's why I am always looking out for the signs. The iPads and the extra money, and coming home when they would buy McDonald's, now they buying all this expensive food and food that would cost $20-something. It's like, and they are not working, they're in school, they are teenagers. All these are signs.
Does the Family Resource Center have a hotline number for victims to call, or even persons who want to call to get help for someone who they feel might be being victimized by human trafficking or any other sort of violence or jeopardy?
It's 340-776-STOP, 776-7867.
What about our children? Children are easy prey for these sexual predators and these traffickers. And they're so easy to lure them in through use of social media and other things, or they see they usually somehow know how to pick their victims, and they usually prey on the children, especially when it comes to sexual servitude.
Especially with sex trafficking. And I think it has risen because of the pandemic, because children are left at home with an uncle, a cousin, a neighbor, and then people are taking advantage of them because the mother have to go out to work. She have to fend for her children because things are rough. We have to make sure our children are doing well. You go to their room, you could tell them, how was school today? Have a little conversation with them. Our children could be going through a lot of stuff, and it just killing them inside, and that's why they end up being violent. So we really have to talk to them and listen. We have to listen to them, talk to them, make sure before you leave, they're going to school virtually, go to their room, well, have a nice day today. And if anything, call me, or in between you call them to find out how is everything at home. And because I heard my 16-year-old son said, Mommy, I wish I could do something to help my friend because he's always angry and he was never that child. And he was always this nice young boy who was so friendly, and now everything is like he is always negative, or he is like he have a tantrum. So I was telling him, so what do you think you can do to help him? He told me, Mommy, I wish I knew. That's why I'm coming to you as a mother. What would you do? So I said, well, as a mother, I don't know him. He knows this young, he does talk to him on the phone. I tell him the most you can do is encourage him and ask him if anything is bothering him. And you could also give him our telephone number if he wants to talk to one of our counselors. That's why we are trying to do outreaches in the school virtually, because everything is virtual now.
So how can the Family Resource Center reach the kids so that they can know where they can call if they need to?
Our child youth worker, she has been working with the schools doing outreaches. We collaborate with DVSAC, Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Council.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so we work closely with them. And if more organizations would partner and to come up with ideas out of the box, and because the thing is that children cannot go to the park now, children cannot play sports because everybody's inside and everybody's just, they don't know what to do. So we really have to try our best to get things that they can gain from. We know that they are on social media. They are on Facebook. I think we should look towards doing more stuff virtually for the young people.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Stewart, for those very, very wise words. And thank you to the Family Resource Center for all the work that they do in helping victims, particularly, well, in the Virgin Islands. And now we know from all over the world who happen to come here in the Virgin Islands and need the kind of help. And coming up next, we're going to talk to Clema Lewis, who is the executive director of the Women's Coalition of St. Croix, and she's going to give us some real talk about what is going on with the Women's Coalition of St. Croix and how they've been helping human trafficking victims for years. Welcome to Justice Matters.
Thank you.
Tell me, does the Women's Coalition provide any services to victims of human trafficking?
Yes, we do. And we have been providing services to victims of human trafficking, I would say, for years. But it wasn't as pronounced as before, and it wasn't as open as it is now. We provide shelter. We've provided transportation, food, clothing. We've helped them with housing. We've helped them with medical care. We've assisted them with getting their own housing after they were in our shelter. And we provide the same service when they have children with them as well.
Do you service the St. Croix area, or does it matter?
Well, it doesn't matter. We particularly do St. Croix because Family Resource Center is in St. Thomas, but I've gotten calls from the States. We had 2 women that actually came from California that they wanted to get out of California for safety reasons under human trafficking, and we sheltered them down here in St. Croix. So we would never turn anybody, whether they come from one of the other islands. No, we wouldn't turn them.
In your experience, what impact does human trafficking have on the victims that you've seen?
The biggest impact I noticed that it has completely disrupted their lives, and they have had to relocate from wherever they were for safety reasons. So whether they were in Puerto Rico, California, Georgia, Atlanta, believe it or not, we get people human trafficking just from the mainland. And it used to be pretty bad when we had all those nightclubs open with the dancers. A lot of those were labored.
So what did the Women's Coalition do to help them?
So what we would do with them would bring them to the shelter. The first thing you have to do is provide them safety and counseling and assure them nobody is going to come and get them. They're not going to be deported or lock them up because they came for safety. Then we try to find if they have family members that they haven't been able to reach out to, that's critical. We help them contact their family, let their family know they're safe, and then we put mechanism in place. We make sure they get a medical examination to make sure they're safe. If we need to go through immigration and naturalization services, then we start that process. We go to legal services sometime so they can help us with the legal entity. But it's whatever they need at the time, we provide that services. But mostly it's the emotional support, being safe, and know that they're gonna be safe while they're here.
What condition do you find the victims in after such a traumatic situation?
Well, mostly the conditions I've noticed they've been in is mostly emotional and psychological distraught and afraid. Sometimes the physical conditions are kind of rough because they haven't had any medical treatment. Sometimes it depends on what kind of clothing they have on. We've had them with practically nothing, raggedy shoes, maybe disheveled because they don't have access to clothes or whatever. So it might be the physical appearance, but most of them I think that stands out for me is the emotional, psychological state. The fear is, are you somebody I can trust? Or you just another person that's going to turn me back over to them? And how safe are you and how can we trust you? So it's mostly that. Once we can build that rapport and let them know that we're a safe place, we're not going to turn you in, we're going to be there for you, we believe you, we support you, then they slowly let the guards down.
Tell me though, are local trafficking cases handled any differently?
I don't think they've handled any different. We had a couple of cases that you call a quote mail order bride, where the women were brought in from overseas. We've had those. Most of the on island have been things like you will do what I want because I hold the key to your immigration status, and if you don't, I'll report you. That's the local stuff. I'm going to use the immigration against you. I'm going to call the police because you hear illegal. That's what we see more local. So they might force them to work. They might force them to do sexual things with their partners because they're holding over their citizenship, the immigration piece for them to stay here. And that's huge. They're scared. They're afraid if they call immigration, they're going to deport them or they're going to hurt them, either of the two.
What about legal assistance if they need protection from deportation or any kind of legal advice? What can the Women's Coalition offer them?
What we do is we can start the process and get the information, but we normally call legal services. So the first day legal services is open because they get the VAWA money, Violence Against Women Act, and they're able to provide service to immigrants under VAWA. So if they come on the weekend, of course, we would have to wait because they're not on 24 hours. But as soon as Monday or Tuesday or whenever the office is open, then we call legal services and tell them we got emergency and we need them to help us work with a victim.
Yes, and I think that this is a good time to talk about the T visa, which is something that is offered from the federal government with respect to victims who are trapped in these kinds of situations where they are threatened by deportation if they say anything. And instead of being trapped in that situation, there's also what they call the T visa, which could be available to them so that they won't have to be deported. And in essence, it does protect them. So that's where the legal assistance would be needed, because they can be protected with respect to that, so they don't have to fear deportation.
Right, and they don't have to be afraid because once they come to us or they report it to the police or whoever, that it automatically means deportation. And that's what a lot of them do. And that's why they're afraid to report. That's why they stay in those relationships. And we try to let them know there are options, there are choices.
What about when immigration is not an issue and you're dealing with just local persons or persons who are citizens?
We have had some cases, let me take it back that I think about, where I talked about the dancing, the labor in the club, where they were brought here under false pretense and told they were going to be paid a certain amount of money. And then when they came here, they were sexually abused and mistreated. Those victims are a lot easier for us to work with because they're in the US. And with those, we're able to contact their family, make a police report, whatever we need to do, and we can buy them a ticket and send them back home. So that's much easier if they want to go. And some of those do want to go back home because it's in the US. Providing the home situation is okay. And sometimes not. Sometimes even in the US, it's just as bad.
Tell me, do you ever get calls from the victims themselves?
We rarely get it from the victim themselves, you know. It's usually always somebody else that suspects. Believe it or not, it might be a neighbor. It might be a family member that feel like their family member is doing something illegal. It might be somebody from law enforcement. It might be somebody from custom. So usually it's outside people that's noticing. We even got a call once from a church. So sometimes it's outside people picking up the signs that something is wrong. I don't remember ever, maybe some of my counselors ever getting calls directly from the victim themselves asking for help. It's been other people intervening on their behalf, or they told somebody else, or maybe they went to the store and told somebody in the store that they need help in the store, called us, that kind of thing.
What are the signs that raise suspicion?
So the calls I got are things like the woman can't leave the house. And he's always there. No one is allowed to come in. They know she's from a foreign country, because we can say we nosy here if we want, but we watch a lot of things. And so they notice that the person is foreign by their physical makeup. They know they're not a Virgin Islander. So that's one of the first clues that they're not from here. So then they try to gather where they are from here, and the behaviors of the perpetrator. Is the person always locked in the house? If they come out, are they allowed to come out? Are they allowed to talk to people? How do they dress when they come out? How they're treated in public? Those are some of the signs that we notice, that they'll call and say, well, I noticed that this woman came in 2 months ago and never been outside the house. I think that's really suspicious. Or when she comes out, she's always with him. We even had a doctor's office that said that a woman was brought in from one of the islands, one of the Filipino islands, and the doctor was suspicious that something was wrong, but the perp would not even let the doctor examine without him being present. That's another key. So even though the doctor insisted I need to do it, like, no, I'm gonna be here, you're gonna examine this, those kind of things that set off signals.
I think one of the main things too is that we gotta try to be not so judgmental, because sometimes you can see a person, they may appear to be a, quote unquote prostitute or whatever it is that you might want to call them, and you don't know what's going on. So really being aware that that person could be a victim, they could be in distress. And so it's really good if we can, keep our eyes open, eyes and ears open with respect to that, because some people just need help and they don't know how to get it.
And you know why I think that's why we get our calls to Attorney General, is because a lot of people call us and want us to make the calls. They'll go, okay, Clema, I'm calling you and telling you, and I'm giving you the information. So if they come after anybody, they're gonna come after you. But guess what? I don't have a problem with that.
That's important to let people know, yes, that the law protects you. If you make a good faith report because you suspect somebody's in danger or you suspect a crime is being committed, the law protects you. So you don't have to feel, that you might get in trouble, suppose they don't do anything. It's something you really got to think about. Right.
And that's an excellent point, because we really do believe that if they selling their body or they dancing in these nightclubs, they don't deserve help. Nobody needs to call, they grown, they get what they take. But we don't know what took them there. We don't know how they ended up there. Maybe that's the only way they can make a living. And you're so right.
What is the one thing that you'd like to say that you can leave us with, that you feel that the listening public would benefit in hearing?
If you suspect, and again, like we said, it doesn't hurt to make a call. If you have any suspicions, you can call the Women's Coalition, call the police department, call somebody you trust in the community, but call somebody that's gonna do something. Do not call your friend to go pound melee. Do not go on the radio and talk about it and don't get any results. Call somewhere that care about victims, care about safety, care about you, and gonna take action to make a difference. So you can call 340-773-9272, 24 hours. And I want to say, if any victims listening or hearing, please call 340-773-9272. We believe you. We'll be there for you. You can trust us. And we're not about pushing you to do anything. We're not making you anything. We're not telling you to do anything. And we got a safe place. We have a shelter that's safe for you and your children. And ain't nobody gonna come in there and do anything because you're gonna be safe. And just know you're gonna be in a safe place to have time to get yourself together and decide what's your next steps.
Thank you so much, Clema Lewis of the Women's Coalition of St. Croix, and thank you also, Anya Stewart from the Family Resource Center in St. Thomas. My great guests, you've been great guests. Thank you so much. You've made a big difference today. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up on the next Justice Matters, we'll have part 2 of our human trafficking series, this time, crime and punishment. It's about the law enforcement response that you need to know about. Don't miss it. See you then.